If you're new to Sage Audio, know that we absolutely love mastering music, so I'm not going to show you bad mastering plugins. In fact, some of the plugins in this video are so unique and impressive that I can't think of an alternative, paid or free. So let's take a look at 9 free mastering plugins I'd actually use. Let's start the list off with what might be one of my new favorite plugins, Neural Amp Modeler by Stephen Atkinson and many other developers. So this plugin is really something special. It's a container for amp, guitar cabinet, and pedal neural networks. Now, all of these have been created by musicians and some engineers with a good understanding of machine learning, and they use NAMM's open source program. In short, these generous musicians have run their gear through the program and then generated files that anyone can input into the Neural Amp Modeler. Unlike impulse responses, these models can recreate harmonic distortion, frequency-dependent ADSR, compression, and more to fully encapsulate the behavior of any hardware. So I found models for the Neve 1073 and the handcrafted Velvet preamp, as well as a 15 inches per second Studer tape machine. Now, the only complication is that these files are designed for mono signals. For example, you'll notice that the left and the right channels of the Neve 1073 are modeled separately. So when we're mastering or we're processing a stereo file, we'll have to use some creative routing, but it's nothing too crazy. In short, I'll duplicate the track and use a plugin to isolate the left channel on one and the right channel on the other. In this case, I'm using the free plugin Isolate by TB Pro Audio. Then I'll insert the Neural Amp Modeler and import the left model on the left channel and the right model on the right channel. I'll turn off the gating, the EQ, and normalize functions and rely solely on driving the input into the model and then compensating with the output to control the amount of total harmonic distortion. For the Studer model, heavy distortion is introduced at the default input level, but since this is a complex model that responds to the incoming signal, I could lower the input and then compensate with the output level to dial in how much distortion and character of the model that I want. Now, I don't know about you, but I find this extremely exciting since it basically creates a way for engineers to share the sound of their gear with one another for free. Now, Tone Hunt is the best website that I've found for getting these new models, so you can check that out if you do end up downloading this modeler. Now, hopefully, stereo modeling is going to be incorporated into the plugin soon. Let's take a listen as I switch between the original mix and loudness compensated modeling of the Neve 1073, the Velvet preamp, and the Studer tape machine. Up next, let's take a look at MoMA and Sight, both by Analog Obsession. So alone, these plugins work well for mastering, but when they're combined with the signal routed from MoMA into Sight, it sounds really great. MoMA introduces subtle to moderate compression and harmonic distortion that could either be even or odd harmonics. Sight is a high-frequency processor that uses both EQ and harmonics to brighten the signal. Now, I'd recommend either of the glue settings on MoMA since the Mojo settings are a bit too aggressive. Use 100% wet with a low amount. Then start with a high amount of the Sight plugin and find the frequency range that you want to accent before dialing in the effect by reducing the amount dial. Let's take a listen to this combination and notice how the track sounds fuller, brighter, more detailed, and has a complex overall sound.
So I fake like something you say, I just couldn't believe. Now you're walking around the block like you don't give a care.
Next is ZL Equalizer, which is an open source project on GitHub. So I covered this one last week when we were discussing free vocal plugins, but like the plugins that inspired this one, it could be used for mastering. It allows for 16 dynamic bands, all of which could be stereo, mid, side, left, or right in their placement, with 9 different filter types. The dynamic bands can have their thresholds, attack, release, and knee adjusted, and we could introduce look ahead and RMS detection up top. We can solo the bands to get a better understanding of the mix, and we can get some great analyzer options. Let's take a listen to some settings that emphasize the kick, the snare's fundamental, the mid-frequencies width, the vocals clarity, and the stereo width of the air frequencies.
So I fake like something you say, I just couldn't believe. Now you're walking around the block like you don't give a care.
Real quick, if you want to get your mixes to sound better than your favorite artist's mixes, we have a mixing membership called the Sage Audio Membership, where you get access to Sage Audio University for in-depth mixing and mastering courses, unlimited personalized mixing feedback, private one-on-one mentorship, and 50 free mastered songs per year. Go to sageaudio.com or use the link in the description. Next, we have Automatic Light by Reflex Acoustics. Now, this is a really unique compressor. The threshold changes based on the incoming level, and the levels of the mid and the side channels are showcased to the right. We could still control the amount of compression, the ratio, and the attack and release, which makes this work well for mastering. Now, if you only need to create some glue and soft compression, try a long attack, a moderate release, and only a tiny bit of the compression dial. This track in particular doesn't need compression, but still let's take a listen to subtle, then aggressive compression before returning it to a usable level.
So I fake like something you say I just couldn't believe. Now you're walking around the block like you don't give a care.
Next up, we have Dynamic Range Meter by Reflex Acoustics. So this meter breaks the frequency range up, and it shows the dynamic range of each. The green bar is the peak level, the blue is the majority of the tonal elements, and the purple represents the signals that are either being masked or just about to be masked. Meanwhile, red is the noise floor. For the full stereo mix, we could observe the full spectrum band, or we could click on the frequency ranges to solo the ranges. At the bottom, we'll notice the level of the side image relative to the mid image. So the side image is 6 dB below the mid for the overall mix. Then we could view this value for each frequency range. So all in all, this meter shows some really helpful metrics when you're mastering, and you could use it to help identify problems or use it to establish some standardized relationships for EPs or albums. Last up, we have two clippers that have different sounds, Lycos by Kasari Studios and FreeClip 2 by Ven Audio. Now I like both of these, but for different reasons. Lycos has a slightly fuller sound than the mids, but with more overall distortion. FreeClip 2 sounds cleaner with less noticeable artifacts, but it seems to lose some of the low mids. Now maybe this is just in my head, but after comparing the two, that's what I'm hearing. Now both have very similar features, but I like the compensation tool that this one has to get a better understanding of how clipping is affecting the timbre. Let's take a listen to each.
Now you're walking around the block like you don't give a care. Now you're walking around the block like you don't give a care.
As I mentioned earlier, if you want to get your mixes to sound better than your favorite artist's mixes, we have a mixing membership called the Sage Audio Membership, where you get access to Sage Audio University for in-depth mixing and mastering courses, unlimited personalized mixing feedback, private one-on-one mentorship, and 50 free mastered songs per year. Go to sageaudio.com or use the link in the description.